Hi guys, I'm back again today with another video, and today we're checking out the 1.8 billion plan for Amsterdam. So this is a plan. I don't know if it has come to fruition, or is it still an ongoing plan, or is it a plan that is being, like waiting to save budget for, or anyways, that's the point of the reaction to see what is happening. So before we start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and let's get it.
Video was made possible by AnyDesk. This is the Houthavens, Amsterdam's newest neighborhood. Compared with the rest of the city, the
This is
Houthavens
a nice
looks
neighborhood.
strange. It has the canals, the bricks, and kind of similar buildings. But the Houthavens, it's different. It's not hundreds of years old, not even a decade. Its buildings don't just look like they're from the center, they look like they're copies of entirely different neighborhoods, and even cities. On one island, it's Copenhagen. On another, it's Amsterdam, from the 1600s. Traditional houses have been transformed into weird futuristic hybrids, while cars drive underground. It is one of the most expensive and desired neighborhoods in the entire city. Its canals were not even needed, but built to match the vibe of the historic city. Every single island looks different. This is not just any random city neighborhood. This is the genius design of Amsterdam's newest neighborhood.
I wonder what's the name, and is it expensive?
Amsterdam was built on a swamp. To keep its houses stable, they were built on wooden poles. As the city grew, the demand for wood did too. But if you need lots of timber, you're going to have to find a place to store it. Halfway through the 19th century, a part of the city becomes a floating lumberyard, the Houthavens. For decades, it stored wood arriving from the Baltic Sea. But then, the car came. The automobile paved the way for long-haul trucking. Delivering by boat became unattractive. The timber yard crawled on, slowly, until a revolution killed it. Wood poles were no longer necessary to hold up the city's homes. Concrete poles were enough. One of the most important lumber ports in Northern Europe was dying, but it would have revenge. In the 1950s, a man designs a building. The Unité de Habitation is the poster child for the architecture of the 20th century, modernism. After the wars, Europeans had to build and build quickly. Concrete was precast in factories and assembled on site. Less time, labor, cost. The strong concrete foundations meant buildings could go higher and denser. But it had a problem.
To clear away our slums.
Modernism's intentions were sometimes noble.
We want houses quickly.
Its execution, though, elitist and boring. Humans have different tastes in food, clothes, and people. Why should their houses be the exception? Modernism's strength was standardization, affordability. But its weakness was the inability to provide another basic human desire, the desire for variation.
The Houthavens is Amsterdam's newest neighborhood. We have excavated the former lumber yard to create an archipelago. It's designed to be a microcosm of Amsterdam. We have taken different architectural styles from across the city and recreated a modern, updated version of them for the 21st century. Each artificially created island has its own unique theme, design, and history. When you walk through the Houthavens, you are walking through the history of Amsterdam.
It's the 1500s. Amsterdam is expanding. Next to its new canals, the city built hundreds of canal houses. Guided by a few simple constraints, equal width, similar height, and a limited selection of materials and color, it produced variation that did not get out of hand. Today, these houses are prime real estate, some of the most expensive in the entirety of Europe.
Island number 4, Narveland. We have recreated the canal belt. Luxury townhouses with varying facades, a palette of colors, has produced a street that looks harmonious, but every house is still unique.
This is Narva Island, a modern interpretation of Amsterdam's canal belt. The buildings are unique. By sharing materials, colors, and dimensions, the street has variation without sacrificing harmony. Ordered chaos. Like its ancestors, these houses aren't cheap. But luckily, luxury canal houses aren't the only type of building the Houthavens has redesigned. Until the 1600s, Amsterdam's merchants stored goods in the top floor of their homes. As the Golden Age heated up, these attics weren't enough. Across the city, hundreds of warehouses, pakhuizen, were constructed. But as the centuries wore on, the lucrativeness of the trade networks declined. The warehouses emptied. But if they could once hold goods and spices, men believed, then they could also hold shopkeepers and families.
Island number 1, Weeborg Island. We have turned Amsterdam's warehouses into a modern hybrid.
For Island 1, the architects determined the average features of warehouses. They then procedurally rearranged these into modern pakhuizen. A similar kind of ordered chaos as Island 4, but with less architects and cost. In the late 1800s, the city was located behind the Singelgracht. As Amsterdam industrialized, it was time to expand. The Dutch Renaissance style was revived. New buildings were constructed with horizontal layers of natural stone, creating the illusion of buildings with stripes.
Island number 5, Meme Island. Neo-Renaissance style buildings have been converted into a modern hybrid.
Meme Island is another modern version of Amsterdam canal houses, but in a neo-Renaissance style. The old white painted detailing binds the modern versions together with a unified style. With the expansion of the canal belt,
Actually, the first one looked like more appealing to me. And also, even if houses look the same, you can design them inside. Not design them, but like you can decorate them as you wish inside. So even if people are not into similar design houses, it doesn't mean inside should be the same also. Like you can choose to put whatever painting you want, whatever style you want, right? So I do not, maybe I'm just a person who doesn't care about the exterior of how like the design looks, right? And probably honestly inside interior as well. Maybe I'm not necessarily somebody who cares about the design of a home as long as you have a home. Maybe I would if I owned one, or if I like lived in my own space, maybe I would care. But right now, I would say doesn't bother me.
Amsterdam's demand for wood increased. The Houthavens was constructed. But where the Dutch used imported wood for supports, ceilings, and floors, in the Baltics, it was used for even more.
Island number 6, Libau Island. We have built an island that directly references the industry the Houthavens was born from. Timber-looking homes with a Baltic Scandinavian too. We interrupt this broadcast with an emergency message. Are you a father that works in an office job and sees your child getting older and older, but you're just not around at home to see it? Are you just miserable in your boring cubicle and just wish you had more freedom? AnyDesk allows you to unlock the best of both worlds. By accessing your work PC remotely in the fastest, secure, and most efficient way possible,
Ignore me massaging my
AnyDesk
stomach.
gives you the ability to work at home. Use your work computer with lightning-fast connection speeds and transfer files seamlessly while hearing the laughter and joy of your daughter, who will only be this young once. Use the cozy warmth of Oog.
That was a very beautiful
Libau is the sixth
old
island in
school
the
ad.
Houthavens and marks the departure from the traditional architecture. Instead of Amsterdam, it's a modern recreation of the Baltic coast. Wood barns, boathouses, and timber sheds in the color palette from around the Baltic Sea. It's now the 1900s. Amsterdam's population is growing, but the city's elites are realizing something. Maybe poor laborers need better living conditions too. Next to the Houthavens is the Spaarndammerbuurt. In this neighborhood, a strange new form of architecture was born. Apartment blocks that look like fortresses, bricks molded like plastic. Instead of straight lines and sharp corners, edges are smooth. Materials are layered and patterned in ways never seen before, with intricate ironwork and odd facades. But instead of statues of kings and queens, here you find laborers. This is the Amsterdamse school, a form of architecture that influenced the design of thousands of Dutch homes in the 20th century. It also influenced the design of 3 islands in the 21st century.
Island number 3, 2, and 7, Revel Island, Staten Island, and Karlskrona.
These 3 islands reference the neighborhood on the Houthavens' border. Revel Island is the largest. Its buildings are made of brick with round corners and small rectangular windows. One of its buildings is also social housing, sharing the same purpose with the neighborhood that inspired it. Staten Island is also touched by the Amsterdamse school, but it's different. It's a hybrid between a more sober version of the same architecture as well as the Dutch version of Frank Lloyd Wright. The building's homes have horizontal windows divided into smaller panes and a stout roof, but it also has horizontal rectangular shapes and towers of brick. Karlskrona is the last island, and it's still being built. Once it's finished, it will have 2 buildings with smooth brick design elements. It is also the only island that is entirely social housing, the closest to reaching the aim from the creators of the original style.
The Houthavens has traditional and modern architecture, interlinked. It also has expressionist and modern architecture, interlinked, but it also has modern and modern architecture, interlinked.
It's the 60s, and the world is optimistic. Across Europe, utopian concrete mass housing projects start to develop.
The Bijlmermeer is the city of the future. Unlocked by the power of concrete, Amsterdam is constructing buildings that are higher and denser.
This vision was short-lived. These neighborhoods were too alienating, monotonous, and undesirable. But they weren't useless. They provided homes and information that modern architecture had to do something different. In the 70s, the city of Amsterdam creates a different set of islands. The Houthavens' older brother on the eastern side of the city.
Borneo Island is one of the eastern dock islands that we have converted from industry to residential living in the 70s. In the 90s, on this island, we built a new type of street. On 60 plots, residents designed their own unique homes. Architects could experiment with different building materials, facades, and designs, but following a few simple rules. We've created one of the most unique-looking streets in the entirety of Amsterdam.
This is Scheepstimmermansstraat. If there was any modern competitor to mass housing blocks, this was it. It used the new design and construction techniques of the modern era and mixed it with the creative chaos found in the old city. But what it gained in creativity, it lost in practicality. These homes were too expensive and sparse to be a realistic mass housing solution. But what if you combined the best of both?
On island number 0 and the Pondsteiger, we show the city how you're supposed to do modernism.
On Island 0, multiple tall high-rise buildings with a concrete frame. On its other side, one of the largest high-rises in the entire city, the Pondsteiger. Island 0 was the first of all the islands, and it's also the tallest. It's intentionally designed that way to shield the area from industrial noise. Although these buildings are concrete high-rises, they're not monotonous.
On Island 0, you can also find the superlofts, a new type of building with a prefabricated concrete base that allows for an entirely customizable interior. Future residents were able to install CLT floors and wooden interior walls, slotted into supports, to completely personalize their homes according to their lifestyles and routines.
Like Scheepstimmermansstraat, but more affordable. A simple but standard framework creates the room for creativity to flourish. The Pondsteiger is a sibling of the Bijlmer buildings from the 1960s, an upgrade to the adventurous high-rise buildings of the post-war era. Next to multiple, and it's intimidating and potentially boring. Put it on its own, though, and it's an icon, a literal gateway to the Houthavens. Amsterdam's newest neighborhood works because it gives the residents choice within constraints. Ordered chaos is the theme across the entire Houthavens, not just its islands. The features are unique, but together they form a coherent whole. They're all modern versions of historical architecture, but from different time periods. They all have green space, but in different arrangements. Each is designed by a different number of architects. The islands are rectangular, but vary in width and length. This is not a coincidence. This is a genius design.
Modern housing developments are large and alienating. The Houthavens feels personal and quaint.
With the exception of Island 0 and the Pondsteiger, all the buildings are around the same 5-story height. This creates a feeling of closeness that modern housing blocks lack. Underneath Block 0, you can find inner walkways. If houses aren't close together, this can feel unsafe. But in the Houthafens, it's close enough that this won't be a problem. When the houseboats arrive in the neighborhood, it will be even better. The Houthafens is constructed with an artificial history. All of the names of the bridges and islands come from historical landmarks in its former timber trade. You're not part of some futuristic experiment, but of a story that's being written.
Many modern housing developments were built for the automobile, but the Houthavens hides them.
This is Houthaven Park. Beneath it is a tunnel for cars. This was done to improve the air quality, but it's also a multi-million euro effort to include the Houthavens into the rest of the neighborhood. Instead of a separated rich yuppie town, you have a connected rich yuppie town. It's an expensive infrastructure project, but the benefit is a public park that people from the other neighborhood can enjoy. Instead of large parking garages next to high-rises, the Houthaven stores vehicles underneath its islands. There's still roads that bring cars to the neighborhood, but it does feel like pedestrians are in charge.
Modern housing developments were built with strict zoning, but the Houthavens is multi-use.
Across the neighborhood are strategically placed buildings with unique functions. These also have special architectural features, injecting more personality onto the islands. The charm of a city is that it brings things together. Modern housing's biggest mistake was believing that these should be categorized and separate. Still, no neighborhood is ever perfect. Walk around the Houthavens and it's noticeably quiet. Maybe too quiet.
We have kept commercial facilities at a minimum. We could not cannibalize the industry in the surrounding areas.
Look closer and you'll find quite a lot of bikes that are electric and expensive.
The financial crisis cut our budget. We started with 30% social housing, but we had to drop it to 20.
Canals are of course beautiful, but they're also large. Many are looking for affordable homes. It makes you wonder, could it have been designed even more efficiently? These problems aside, I do think the design is genius. A shitty home is better than no home at all, but it's necessary to build houses people want to live in, not just have to. Many of the post-war modernist experiments that are considered failures today were urgent reactions, rational with the information available. The need to increase the number of homes quickly meant building the same was an adaptation. The Houthavens shows us what we learned from the mistakes of our predecessors. Do not tell people what they must live in. Give them the freedom to choose, and to choose between options. Amsterdam itself is made up of strange and different architectural experiments. Combined, though, they all make a great city. Shrink them down, take the best ideas from each, and then you have a genius neighborhood. These are building kits, real, craftable physical models of iconic buildings. This one, as well as our exclusive Belmer kit, are available right now at Hoog.shop. Making one of these gets you into the flow on the worst days. It's a great addition to any interior, and it's the perfect gift for anyone who likes architecture, design, or cities. Touch Amsterdam's most iconic symbols from Hoog.shop. It's also the best way to support the channel. Thank you for watching.
That is really genius. I mean, who would have thought you would have building that spells a word or a place, right? Maybe it's something that has been done before, but I just didn't know about it. But that is beautiful. It's like very, how do you say that? It's very similar architecture, but also so different, right? I don't know if there's a word for that, like so same, but also so they stand out differently. I don't know where to find a word to describe what I'm trying to say. Um, yeah, it's like adaptation of the past and history of Amsterdam, but also modernized to fit into today's society and people's standards and also people's taste, right? How can you put all these similarities and differences into one, but but it actually works, right? This is so beautiful and genius. Um, like I say all the time, it always like amazes me, so many new things that we discover and learn and see in our reactions. But anyways, let me know in the comments what your thoughts about this, and if you like the video, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.